Welcome again to Project Pack number 12. This is day 3. My name is Rick.
Hi, I'm Maria.
And today I'm going to begin with gratitude for this beautiful tile. We often skip over that in these, but just to feel it and to appreciate this beautiful paper and this beautiful opportunity. I'm going to do a fragment and reticula. And to begin that, I am going to create the reticula, which is the net or the framework for what's going to go into the spaces. And I'm using my brown pen, and I'm drawing first an outline, and then I'm going to go back in and make some subsections. And as we often say, find a comfortable place for your hand and then move the tile under that, both in position and direction. So in this case, I'm going to just make 4 beautiful, somewhat square shapes for my reticula. And I decided to leave it large instead of making more, because I wanted to really get into the shading and the pattern and really appreciate the fragment that we're going to put in.
You just switched to your black pen, right?
Right. So I'm switching from the brown pen that I used for the reticula, and now I'm putting orbs in the center with my black pen. And we're beginning with what is, if you're familiar with the Tangle well, there's a great background for that, and you can see it in our newsletter. It was inspired by a sort of like a jewelry box from medieval times, probably, it was in the Higgins Armory, so whenever knights wore armor is where this pattern came from.
Do you remember where the name came from?
Oh, I don't.
I don't either.
Well, we'll have to figure that out.
Well, I don't know what else to say.
But it might be in the newsletter. We'll have to do it. Check it out. So in fragments and reticula, you can repeat it without, you can, or in this case, I'm mirroring it. So you'll notice that this is a mirror image. This one that I'm drawing is a mirror image of the first one that I drew. So just imagine that line that separates it was a mirror. What would it look like on the other side? And I'm drawing my arcs in a way that is, comfortable for my hand. Sort of pivoting on the heel of my hand.
So
there.
again, mirror and
yeah.
one on the side of it, right?
And I'm taking off and landing. And each one mirrors the other. So take off from that corner, which means to slightly retrace the line. And then when I get to its destination, I also slightly retrace it. So that makes the transition gentle. Okay, so that's sort of the beginning of a setup of well, but we're going to do something a little different. Instead of doing the petal-like shapes, I'm going to make an arc. That would be the petal shape. I'm going to make an arc that goes all the way to the other corner, but I'm going to keep in mind hollowboss. So when I get to a line, I'm going to stop. So let's draw that arc, but okay, I'm going to stop at that line. So let's do that on all of them. So this one would go to that corner, and I'll take off, and then when I get there, I'm just going to stop. So get your tile where it would be if you were going to do that whole arc, and then in hollowboss fashion, we're just going to stop there. So once we have all of those, and that's sort of cool in itself, right?
Yes, this is something new. This is a new direction
This is,
for Will.
yeah, this is using that as a basic starting point. But now I want to, I'm going to, instead of finishing that first one, I think I'm going to do all of them just so we can, because I wanted to see what this would look like, you know, what the meta shapes would look like once I had done all of them and we could see it together. So again, this is the mirror image. I'm setting myself up as if I were going to draw the entire arc, but I stop at that line. And for me, it helped to imagine each time that I was going to draw the entire arc. So I'm seeing the entire arc just before I draw it, but then I stop when I get there. I think this is going to have some really nice meta shapes, right? This is fun.
I like the direction it's going.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is another example of you know, work larger than you think you might need to, because it gives you more options. A lot of times in fragments and reticula, the tendency, or my tendency, is to make the reticula, check that out. Isn't that cool? That'd be a cool stained glass, right?
It's a doable stained glass.
Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you start out, okay, so here we go. We're going to now complete that arc. So in a hollowbar fashion, right, we go right to the corner. So let's do all of those. And you'll notice I'm literally drawing behind. I'm tracing it in the air because I want my pen, when it hits the paper, to be predisposed to go, you know, to continue that arc. Look at that.
Ah, beautiful.
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool. It has a Celtic look to it.
Yeah. Without the, you know, setting up behind, you know, without putting down pencil lines
And
and
having to
planning it
erase,
ahead.
yeah.
So part of the charm of this one is you get this really complicated, perhaps looking shape, but without figuring it out ahead of time of what it's going, you know, okay, well, I got to plan this out. And it's just like, do an arc, don't cross the line, do an arc, where would it come out in hollow bar? So you can see, as we were saying before, is that by having a larger reticula, you get, you know, you get more options to really play and become perhaps a little bit more intricate.
You'll want to do this over and over and over. Do 10 tiles with this pattern so that you can really learn to do it without having to think too hard. It'll come natural. This one's really worth it. It's just such a beautiful pattern.
Look at that. Isn't that fun?
Ah, beautiful.
So you've got this, it formed this really neat circle and these like petals as well. So I want to, quote unquote, hide the reticula inside, and one way to hide it is to just echo it. So instead of being a line, it becomes a texture. Reminds me of that there was this leprechaun who tied a ribbon to a piece of grass where the gold was, and the man said, okay, well, you promise not to remove the grass, the ribbon, while I go get a shovel so I can dig up the gold. And the leprechaun said, yeah, absolutely. And so the guy brought a shovel back, and the leprechaun had put a ribbon on every single piece of grass in the field. So in that, these grid lines disappear just by enhancing them.
I had not heard that one
You've
before.
not heard that one?
You're holding back on me.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Look.
Okay, so as much as Maria has painted, I haven't. So I had a quick lesson from her, and I am rehydrating my my gouache here, and I'm just being patient and adding water and waiting a little bit longer than you see me here. And And then I wanted to understand how it worked with my tools. So I did different weights and different, you know, okay, if I put it over this pen or if I put this chalk over the gold, you know, how does it work? What doesn't work? So I learned a lot just by doing that, and I got my gold to where I want it, and now I'm going to pick one set of, see, I learned to twirl my pen there. Brush. And I am going to fill in or color in those like Vesica Pisces shapes that go in part of what's forming the circle. So I'm putting the tip of my pen into the corner and then pulling the rest of it out. And I'm just going to do that on each one. And this was a new experience for me, because I have not been working with brush, but it was really enjoyable to learn you know, how this works, how the brush works, how it works on the paper, and then how it transitions as it dries. So right now you're seeing it in this, oh, it looks like this really heavy, heavy gold, but as the water evaporates, you can see on the lower left, and on the left there, it's like just this sort of like glistening. But if you turn it different ways in the light, all of a sudden it pops right out. So we've got those guys done. So it sort of enhances what we call the meta pattern that forms in these fragments in reticula. You see different shapes.
So he's cleaning his brush because I yell
so
at him.
I was taught how to clean the brush. So I'm
twirling
the brush,
brush,
and then I'm carefully putting it back in that little tube there, because I want to keep its snap working well. So now I'm just adding, so I let this dry, just so you know, you can see that it's all just that really beautiful glistening now. And I wanted to lift up those shapes. So to do that, I'm pushing that grid in the background lower, and then taking one of my 3 tortillons and just evening that out, and just creating those brown lines and that graphite as a texture now to support that. Okay, this is looking fun.
It's beautiful.
So I'm going to add some shading, and what worked for me is to go into those right angle corners that are near the middle. I picked, you can see the ones that I picked, and instead of bringing the graphite all the way out to the edge, I wanted it to transition. So I'm going to pull it out to the edge eventually, but I'm going to use the tortillon to do that. So I'm loading the graphite up in those little corners there. Turning my tile. And again, we also talk about
so you're shading right now the ones that aren't gold.
Right,
that are
and
not
thank
gold.
you for pointing that out. Yeah. So I'm doing the other ones, the ones that are pointing into the middle as like a petal. So I'm putting the graphite on the ones that I did not paint.
Right.
So you can see I'm now pulling that out with the tortillon all the way to the edge. And so it makes a nice transition.
It gives it that under and over feel.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now I'm working on the unpainted ones to give some under and over, both with itself and with the gold.
So you can see it weaving all of a
Yeah.
sudden, right?
So again, on those unpainted ones, I'm going to come in with my white chalk and add some highlights. And this is all part of that idea of patterning. So the repetition, even the shading or the highlighting, becomes part of the pattern here. And we're holding I'm holding the chalk and the pencil at a really low angle.
Go in with your white tortillon. That saves for that.
Right?
I hope that's your white one.
No, actually, I think this is I think I used the
brown.
no, the graphite one because I was trying to mix it in with the graphite. So I thought, well, if I use the white one, then I'm just going to have two graphites. So I'm going in and sort of making the transition between the white and the graphite. And I'm really enjoying this process. One of the neat things about fragment and reticula is once you set up one fragment, you're going through each one and there's this nice rhythm. Okay, do this, then do that. So now you can see I'm holding my pencil at a slightly higher angle because I just want that tip to restate a little bit more in the crevice, a little increase in light and dark. Because as we said before, or in another one, the tortillon will even things out. So I want to go back and load it up with as much contrast as I can. And I just love, like I said, the rhythm of going from one fragment to another. So then I looked at it and I thought, wow, I'd really like those to be rounded just a little bit, to give them a sense of curvedness instead of just like maybe flat cut paper. And I hadn't planned to do this, but I just want to do it a little bit as like a hint on the edges. So you can see now I've got my pencil at a fairly high angle. Just giving just a hint. And so it may not be immediately obvious, but the eye turns it into this lovely, rounded multi-curve or complex surface. And then I'll do that to all of them. Smooth that all together. So this is coming nice.
Mm.
So now I want to do something with the gold. So I'm going to take the same approach with the General's Pastel Brown chalk and do it in the corners as the same way that I did on the petal shapes, or the ones that radiate from the center. So just loading that up, and I almost cut the pencil in the Generals in half to have it so I could hold it at a low angle, but instead...
You can do it with snippers.
Right? But
I've done it.
Yeah. But what I did is I let it get a really dull, become really dull so that I could hold it at a higher angle. But I think in the future I'm just going to cut them in half because I really like the control of the shorter pencil. So I just went ahead and did the outside, and now I'm adding in some highlights, and then I'll go back and smush it all together with a tortillon. So in this case, I make sure I get the tortillon that I'm going to assign to brown. It was fairly easy just to see it which one is which. And I really love this. It's like sculpting or polishing or,
Yeah, the whole polishing brass, right?
right?
Yeah.
So there's this sense of, well, I'm just looking at it, it's this really nice like interweaving of gold and silver here. So it's a nice, nice image. So you can really get a sense of that circle and then those petals. So I think if you were to do this in a larger scale with more of them, it would be a really nice overall pattern. So now I want to have some a little sharper edge or tip. So my bijou, and so I can go back in there. My bijou sharpening station is what I meant to say.
I love having a sharpening station because trying to do it over a wastebasket or anything like this, it kind of gives you that, you don't have to move too much. Look at that, how pretty.
Right. So you can see the gold
The
as
sparkle,
it catches
yeah.
the light.
Very
So
beautiful.
one little bit here, I'm going to want to bring out those orbs. So I'm really going to load up the brush and just make a nice puddle there in each one. Just load that up, just that little bit. Twirling my
Yeah.
my brush,
Always the same way.
right? And just put that there and remember, okay, we're going to let it dry. Figure out how to incorporate my chop in there. So I think I'm being careful where I'm touching it because I think those are still in the process of drying.
Was that a brown pen?
Yeah. So I mixed try to incorporate it somehow with that matches. So that's pretty cool. And remember to sign and date your tile and that whole appreciation that goes in the process to be able to do this. So this was fun.
Yes, it's beautiful.
So thank you again for playing with us. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and have fun.
Bye.
Bye now.